February 20th, 2026. Undisclosed location, Middle East. Over 120 American combat aircraft had landed in the region within the past 72 hours, the largest surge of U.S. air power in the Middle East since the 2003 Iraq War. F-22 Raptors, F-35 Lightning IIs, F-15 Strike Eagles, F-16 Fighting Falcons, E-3 Sentry AWACS command and control aircraft, all supported by cargo planes and aerial refueling tankers that cross the Atlantic in waves. This isn't a rotation. This is a surge. Flight tracking data shows departures from bases across the United States and Europe. Sustained, coordinated, deliberate. Meanwhile, satellite imagery confirms the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group is already operating in the Arabian Sea off the coast of Oman, strike range of Iran. And the USS Gerald R. Ford, fresh from operations in the Caribbean, is steaming east across the Atlantic. Last known position, off the coast of Morocco. 2 carrier strike groups, over 120 aircraft, guided missile destroyers armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles, air defense batteries, command and control systems. Everything is in place. And in Washington, President Trump just set the clock.
So now we may have to take it a step further, or we may not. Maybe we're going to make a deal. You're going to be finding out over the next probably 10 days.
10 days. That's it. The countdown has begun. And the military is ready. This is what happens when diplomacy runs out of time. The ultimatum didn't come out of nowhere. For months, negotiations between the United States and Iran have dragged on. Talks in Geneva, meditated by Oman, focused on one issue: Iran's nuclear program. The Trump administration wants Iran to stop enriching uranium, dismantle its stockpile, accept international inspections, guarantee it will never develop nuclear weapons. Iran's response? No. Tehran insists its nuclear program is for energy, not weapons. It refuses to halt enrichment. It refuses to surrender its uranium. And it rejects any deal that doesn't include the lifting of U.S. economic sanctions. The talks have gone nowhere. Trump's patience ran out on February 20th. Standing in front of reporters, he delivered the ultimatum.
So now we may have to take it a step further, or we may not. Maybe we're going to make a deal. You're going to be finding out over the next probably 10 days.
He paused, then added,
They can't have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. You can't have peace in the Middle East if they have a nuclear weapon.
Translation? Iran either agrees to U.S. terms, or the military strikes. This isn't the first time Trump has ordered action against Iran. Last June, during a 12-day conflict between Iran and Israel, Trump authorized Operation Midnight Hammer. 7 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers escorted by F-35s and F-22s struck 3 Iranian nuclear facilities: Fordow, Natanz, Esfahan. Bunker-busting bombs weighing 30,000 pounds each penetrated deep underground. The strikes completely obliterated key enrichment sites, according to Trump. Iran retaliated. Ballistic missiles rained down on Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest U.S. military installation in the Middle East. Qatari air defenses intercepted most of them. No American casualties. The conflict ended after 12 days, but the nuclear program didn't. Satellite imagery from late January 2026 shows Iran has been rebuilding. Concrete shields poured over damaged facilities, tunnel entrances buried and fortified, missile bases repaired. Iran learned from the June strikes, and now it's preparing for the next round. The military buildup is staggering. Retired Marine Colonel Mark Kansian, now a senior advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, told reporters the United States is doing all the things it would do if it were going to conduct some sort of attack. The deployment includes some of the most advanced combat aircraft in the world. F-22 Raptors, air superiority fighters designed to dominate the skies, stealth technology that makes them nearly invisible to radar, super cruise capability that lets them fly supersonic without afterburners. Their job? Clear the airspace. Eliminate any Iranian jets that attempt to intercept the strike package. F-35 Lightning IIs, 5th generation stealth fighters with advanced sensor and radar evading capabilities. In Operation Midnight Hammer, F-35 suppressed Iranian air defenses, clearing the path for B-2 bombers. They'll do the same job again if ordered. F-15E Strike Eagles, twin-engine, 2-seat bombers capable of carrying over 23,000 pounds of ordnance, precision-guided munitions, bunker busters, long-range missiles. These aircraft can hit targets deep inside Iran and fight their way back out. F-15 Fighting Falcons, multi-role fighters that provide close air support, strike capability, and defensive coverage. And E-3 Sentry AWACS aircraft, airborne command and control platforms with massive rotating radar domes mounted on top. These planes can track hundreds of targets simultaneously, coordinate strike packages, and manage the entire battle space from 30,000 feet. All of this is supported by KC-135 and KC-46 aerial refueling tankers, Without them, none of these aircraft could reach Iran and return safely. Flight tracking data shows the tankers have been crossing the Atlantic in waves, refueling the fighters, extending their range, keeping them airborne. This is the largest concentration of US air power in the Middle East in over 2 decades. But the real question is where the bombers will launch from. Diego Garcia, a tiny atoll in the middle of the Indian Ocean, over 1,000 miles south of India, home to a joint US-UK military base. The island has a 12,000-foot runway capable of handling the heaviest bombers in the US arsenal: B-2 Spirits, B-52 Stratofortresses, B-1 Lancers. It's the perfect staging point for strikes on Iran, close enough to reach targets, far enough to be safe from retaliation. But there's a problem. Diego Garcia is British territory. The UK leases the base to the United States under a defense agreement, but that agreement requires British approval for offensive military operations. And UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer just said no. According to reports in British media, Starmer informed Trump that the US cannot use Diego Garcia or RAF Fairford in the UK for strikes in Iran. His reasoning? It would violate international law. Trump didn't take it well. He immediately withdrew US support for the UK's plan to transfer sovereignty of the Chagos Islands, which includes Diego Garcia, to Mauritius. On February 19th, Trump posted on Truth Social, "Do not give away Diego Garcia." He accused Starmer of making a big mistake and warned that the base would be needed for any future operation to counter Iran. The dispute puts the UK in an awkward position. London is trying to balance its alliance with the United States against its commitment to international law. But for the Pentagon, the message is clear. If Diego Garcia is off limits, bombers will have to launch from elsewhere. Alternatives exist. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, bases in the United Arab Emirates, potentially even aircraft carriers if the strike package can be modified. But Diego Garcia was the ideal option. Now, it's complicated. On February 19th, Tehran announced joint naval exercises with Russia in the Sea of Oman and northern Indian Ocean. The drills began immediately. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov issued a warning. Any US strike on Iran would have serious repercussions. He didn't elaborate, but the implication was clear. Russia is watching. Iran also issued a notice to airmen for rocket launchers over southern Iran, live fire drills, and it temporarily closed parts of the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most strategically vital shipping routes in the world. Over 20% of global oil supplies pass through the Strait of Hormuz every day. Closing it, even temporarily, sends a message. Iran controls access to the Persian Gulf. And if war breaks out, that control becomes a weapon. Satellite images from late January show Iran has been fortifying key sites. At the Parchin military complex, Iran built a concrete shield over a new facility and covered it with soil. The site was reportedly bombed by Israel in 2024. Now, it's rebuilt and reinforced. At Fordow, one of the nuclear sites hit during Operation Midnight Hammer, Iran has buried tunnel entrances and fortified access points. At Natanz, another bombed site, Iran has repaired damage and added additional layers of protection. Analysts believe Iran has moved critical assets deeper underground, harder to detect, harder to target, harder to destroy. Professor Vali Nasir from Johns Hopkins University warned during a recent discussion.
I agree. I think the Iranians have rebuilt in the past 6 months in a stealthy way, have taken things further underground. They're going to be unpredictable.
He continued,
They could try to go big at the beginning, or they might want to drag the United States in a protracted situation. So you hit a tanker, or you hit an oil facilities, or you hit an American ship, and then it's up to President Trump to go to the next level.
Nasir's conclusion. We are in a scenario where this might get out of control very quickly. Iran's defensive strategy is multi-layered. Mines in the Strait of Hormuz, anti-ship missiles along the coast, submarines patrolling the Persian Gulf, drones capable of swarming US warships. The goal isn't to defeat the US military, it's to slow it down, inflict casualties, create political pressure for Washington to back off. And Iran has one more card to play. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader, posted a message on social media on February 17th. It was an AI-generated image showing the USS Abraham Lincoln next to a gravestone. The caption read, "More dangerous than that warship is the weapon that can send that warship to the bottom of the sea." Khamenei followed up with a direct warning.
ارتش دنیا ممکنه اونچنان گاهی سیلی بخوره که از جا نتوانه بلنش.
It's psychological warfare, an attempt to intimidate, but it also reflects Iran's strategy. If the US strikes, Iran won't sit idle. It'll retaliate against US bases, against US ships, against US allies in the region. The question is whether Trump is willing to accept that risk. As of February 20th, the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group is operating in the Arabian Sea. Satellite imagery confirms its position off the coast of Oman. The carrier is within strike range of Iran. F-35Cs and Fa-18 Super Hornets can launch from the deck, hit targets inside Iran, and return. EA-18G Growlers can jam Iranian radar and communications. Guided missile destroyers can fire Tomahawk cruise missiles at land targets. Everything is ready. Meanwhile, the USS Gerald R. Ford is crossing the Atlantic. On February 19th, the carrier briefly transmitted its location off the coast of Morocco. It's headed east toward the Strait of Gibraltar and into the Mediterranean. From there, it'll transit through the Suez Canal and into the Red Sea. Final destination? The Arabian Sea. When the Ford arrives, the United States will have 2 carrier strike groups positioned off Iran's coast. That's unprecedented. The Ford just finished supporting operations in the Caribbean, including the January 3rd raid that captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Now it's being redeployed to the Middle East. Fast, urgent, no downtime. The timeline matters. Trump's ultimatum gives Iran 10 to 15 days at most to agree to a deal. That deadline was issued on February 20th, which means the window closes around March 2nd to March 7th. The Ford is expected to arrive in the region by mid-March, according to unnamed senior U.S. officials cited by Reuters. But other reports suggest strikes could happen sooner, as early as this weekend. Multiple outlets, including the New York Times, CBS News, and CNN, cite unnamed sources claiming the U.S. is ready to strike within days. The discrepancy in timelines suggests 2 possibilities. 1. Trump hasn't made a final decision yet. The buildup continues, but the order to strike hasn't been given. 2. The strike is planned, but the exact date is being kept secret to maintain operational surprise. Either way, the military is ready. The clock is ticking. The parallels to Venezuela are impossible to ignore. In September 2025, the U.S. began a military buildup in the Caribbean: ships, aircraft, special operations forces. For months, Washington claimed it was targeting drug traffickers. Then, on January 3, 2026, U.S. forces raided Caracas and captured President Maduro. The buildup was the warning. The raid was the payoff. Now, the same pattern is repeating in the Middle East. But Iran is not Venezuela. Retired Marine Colonel Mark Kansian explained the difference. Iran's geography, far inland and heavily defended, makes a quick ground raid unlikely. If there are strikes, I would expect long-range missile attacks against security forces such as the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. He added, strikes against nuclear facilities are also possible, but missiles like Tomahawk can only damage above-ground facilities. That's the challenge. Iran has learned from June's strikes. Critical assets have been moved underground. Tunnel systems have been fortified. Concrete shields have been poured. Bunker-busting bombs can penetrate some of these defenses, but not all of them. Which means even a successful strike might not fully eliminate Iran's nuclear program. And that creates a dilemma for Trump. Does he order a limited strike that damages but doesn't destroy? Or does he escalate to ensure the program is eliminated? Both options carry risks. A limited strike might provoke Iranian retaliation without achieving the strategic goal. A massive strike might eliminate the nuclear program, but trigger a wider regional war. Trump has said repeatedly that he prefers diplomacy, but he's also made clear that military action is on the table. In his own words, we could have had a deal instead of sending the B-2s in to knock out their nuclear potential, and we had to send the B-2s. Translation? He didn't want to strike, but he did it anyway because Iran wouldn't negotiate. Now, 7 months later, the same scenario is playing out again. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is reportedly planning to travel to Israel on February 28th to meet with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Last summer, U.S. strikes in Iran happened even as American diplomats were scheduled to meet with Iranian counterparts for talks. History might be about to repeat itself. As of now, Iran shows no signs of backing down. In a letter to the United Nations Security Council, Tehran stated, "The United States would bear full and direct responsibility for any unpredictable and uncontrolled consequences." Iran insists it does not seek war, but it also insists it'll respond decisively and proportionately to any U.S. aggression. That's the standoff. 2 carrier strike groups, over 120 aircraft, missiles, bombs, everything positioned and ready. On the other side, fortified bunkers, anti-ship missiles, mines, drones, and a promise to retaliate. Both sides are dug in. Both sides are armed. Both sides waiting. And the clock is running. 10 days. maybe less. One side blinks, or the bombs start falling. So, here's the question. If you were advising the president, what would you recommend? Strike now while the buildup gives maximum advantage? Wait for diplomacy to have one more chance? Or pull back and avoid a war that could spiral out of control? Drop your answers in the comments. This isn't theoretical. This is happening right now. If you made it this far, hit like and subscribe for real-time coverage of global military developments. No speculation, just facts. And if you want to support the channel directly, join the fleet. Loyalty badges, priority responses, and you help us bring these stories to the surface. Click join and get on board. The countdown is running. The forces are positioned. The world is watching. I'll see you in the next one.